Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're having a look at a Reddit post because to be honest, I'm waiting for the update to come out and I thought why not have a look at kind of what's going on. Basically, I got sent this a few hours ago when I was sleeping and woke up and started reading through it and it was kind of fun. Basically, it's about a series of videos that were posted on Bilibili and one of them got a lot of traction and basically the post is talking about why people are annoyed in the Chinese community. So I thought we would go through it and kind of talk about it. And one thing to note is we will be going through a lot of the kind of accusations of the Chinese community, but only the first 10 have been translated. So if there is a person who wants to translate the rest, basically from this video, which is known as 10,000 Words of Anti-Traitor Manifesto, the Indescribable War Thunder, which I'll leave a link to in the description, I would be very happy to give you like a bunch of games or to basically, sort something out for you translating the stuff because I do find these things really interesting. Now, obviously, I don't speak any Chinese, any of the different languages over there, so this could all be wrong. But at the same time, I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at and also do some parallels compared to other communities that we've seen previously. If you enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. And then just kind of, if you want these types of things more, where we just kind of analyze some weird stuff from different parts of the community, let me know because it is kind of interesting. So this is Bilibili. If you don't know what Bilibili is, it's basically the kind of Chinese version of YouTube. It's wild. In terms of it, there's a lot of very interesting content on it, is probably the way to put it. But when it comes to War Thunder, there is a bunch of stuff too. There are many different videos and many different things that you have. But one of the main themes that you may see over here is the targeting of our boy BVVD, which is just kind of sad, BVD of Vyacheslav Belanikov is the creative director, technically, of War Thunder. He turns up every once in a while, and he's done, like, kind of community questions with the Chinese side of things. But basically, the Chinese community just use him as kind of a punching bag, which sucks. Like, you can even see stuff like this. And a lot of the kind of media, which is based around War Thunder, and also negativity is also based around BVD, which, as I said, sucks because generally BVD has been pretty awesome over the years for the War Thunder community. A lot of the reason why War Thunder is incredibly successful is because of BVD, and it also shows why it is not good from a kind of general point of view for developers to be front-facing all the time, especially with their communities, and why stuff like community managers are important, and why stuff like basically putting walls between community members and developers is important. Because what ends up happening is it just puts targets on the developers' backs, and then they worry too much about that instead of just talking or sorting out the game itself. So you have to be a bit careful with these things. And I wish that people were a little bit more, standard about this stuff, but they're just not. So it's unfortunate. It's very, very aggressive in the Chinese community, and also it's aggressive in other communities as well. So just kind of sucks. So let's go through these accusations. One of the things I did actually want to talk about before we get into it, though, is there was a lot of guys talking about, well, why don't we just like segregate the Chinese back to their own server again? They were never segregated in the first place. This was always something that was kind of one of those weird lies that got perpetuated. So, did China have its own set of servers, which were run by Tencent? Yes. Were Chinese people only playing on those servers and not the international servers? No. And this is basically why the Chinese servers got shut down. It wasn't because of the fact that, they wanted everybody to play on the same servers, which, would make sense from Gaijin point of view. It's because of the fact that most of the Chinese community was already playing on the international servers anyway. The only reason people think that what ended up happening was they moved over is because at a similar time to when they got rid of the Chinese server, they also made it so you saw people's real names in terms of War Thunder itself. So instead of everything being English characters, they ended up putting in all characters so you could see people's names in their specific languages. So people started seeing these names pop up all over the place and like, oh my god, we're being infested. by this other community. But no, they were always just there before. They just had, Anglo names because it was auto translating them. So yeah, the idea of segregating a community to a server because they used to be, they were never segregated. Basically, they just had their own server. Some people played it, but a lot of the Chinese community played the international server. And the idea that they weren't able to, oh yes, they were. I've talked to Chinese guys for many years who've played on the international server, way before the merge even happened. So don't worry about that. The other thing is the idea of like segregating a community away because of the fact that they're from a specific area. Can you imagine if that was like put towards every community? Like, oh, let's segregate the German community. Let's segregate the American community. How about we just don't do any of that and we just all play together? How about that? Because the simple thing is, a lot of the points that the Chinese guys bring up are exactly the same bloody points that other communities bring up, which is why I find the whole thing hilarious, because they're basically complaining about the fact that they are treated like everybody else. And then when you have a look at other communities, whether it's the American one, the German one, the British one, all of them say exactly the same things. It's just the fact that when you talk about the Chinese community with these things, it actually basically from like a Western point of view, they go, oh my God, wow, I can't believe these Chinese people are so crazy. And then what happens is you go, yeah, look how crazy these guys are acting. Isn't it weird how you've said the same things in the past? And then they go, oh, well, no, I'm not crazy. Even though I say the same things, I'm justified. And they're not justified because they're Chinese. And then it just turns out it's just straight discrimination. So it's just all over the place. It's a fascinating thing to watch when it comes to not just War Thunder, but just general life, the double standards that everybody lives by. So let's have a look at the top 10 accusations towards Gaijin by the Chinese community. This is by a dude called Dank Mima, which is a great name. Well done. Big ups. So let's go. Number one. So basically, these are the things that are brought up in the video that are negative. So the first one was to make a sale during the 2019 Chinese National Day. Gaijin copied the Chinese tech tree from Tencent's Chinese War Thunder server. The update name was called Night Vision, making the Chinese tech tree the only one that doesn't have a unique update name for it. Do I have news for you, brother? That's not the case, by the way. Italian mains, I see you, all five of you. Italy has a long, funny history of their tech trees being added and basically their names not being added to them. So, for example, the Italian tech tree was added in update Supersonic. And then also the naval one was not added in Regia Marina. That was actually the kind of minor major update after when the Italian naval tech tree got added. So what ended up happening was they actually came out the update before that, but that was also named something different. So Italy is actually the guys who kind of get shafted by this. Also, the idea that it's a great imagine like your nation being added to a game. And by the way, it wasn't a copy paste from the Chinese War Thunder server. As many of the guys who played that server or looked at that server, there were big differences between what was on that server compared to like what you got in the actual Chinese tech tree when it came to premiums and also the layouts and also just the general flags and things. Very, very different, mainly down to Chinese censorship laws. But the other part of it is the idea that you get offended by the fact that they didn't name an update after you. Like they called it Night Vision because they added Night Vision in that update, right? And they added the Phantom and I believe the MiG-21 as well at the same time. It was quite a large update. It was the largest update in War Thunder's history because of the fact they added so many Chinese vehicles, because they added the ground and the aviation one at the same time. But the focus is the fact that they did not call it after us. This is a great slight. Imagine having that mentality. Oh my God, it must be frustrating because you must just have a look around like all of life and be like, why is this not, why is this not talking to me? Why is this not named after me? It's incredibly entitled. Number two, in the early years, the Chinese tech tree had many copied vehicles from the USSR tree, but had higher repair costs, less performance, higher BR compared to the original ones. So this is obviously talking about stuff which happened in the past, so not stuff today. This is also a very interesting thing. So basically, the reason why the VT4 controversy has been such like a lightning rod is because of the fact that there's these grievances supposedly that have happened over years, and they boiled over the top. Basically, the problem that China has, and this was actually talked about in a lot of the posts on the forums that we had a look at the other day. There's a lot of Chinese guys who just do not believe in the whole you know um, forgive kind of deal. So even if you fix something now, or even if you fix something like 30 minutes later from when it happened, they still just remember the slight and they don't remember the fix. And this is basically what's going on here. So the Chinese tech tree back in the day, higher repair costs. You know what that actually means? That means that Chinese players had a higher efficiency than Russian players. If you just want to, compare it to the USSR, that means that Chinese players were just better, because the way that repair costs used to work was they were a balancing factor. So if a vehicle was incredibly high efficiency, it would also have a higher repair cost, just like a lot of the French vehicles that were around when the game came out, or stuff like the B29 as an extreme example of it. Less performance, I can't think of a single actual example of when the Chinese tech tree was added where any of the copy-paste vehicles had less performance than the Russian counterparts. There may have been one vehicle, maybe the Type 62, which didn't have the Heat FS shell when it was added. It got it in the Russian tech tree, and now I think it has it in the Chinese tech tree. But once again, that's an event vehicle versus a standard tech tree one. But I can't think of any others that were like that. If anything, the Chinese actually got better vehicles. The T-3485 Gai, for example, is just a better version of the T-3485. So, I don't know. Higher BR? I don't know the higher BR thing. I don't know where that comes from. But once again, BRs back in the day and even today are based on efficiency. So if Chinese vehicles are more efficient, then they're going to go up in BR compared to the standard counterparts. There was a classic thing with the Sabres, where basically across the board, the Sabres were basically the same when they came out. And then the Italian one was going to get raised because of the fact that it had a higher efficiency than the other Sabres, even though it was exactly the same, or if anything, slightly worse. But then Gaijin just decided to raise all the Sabres at the same time. So yeah, didn't really matter. But yeah, so this is something that happened in like 2021, before a lot of the economy changes, and it's just a complete misunderstanding of how the system worked back then. If you had higher repair costs, that means you were just doing better in the vehicles, and that, if anything, is just showing how good the Chinese player base was. But once again, all this stuff has been fixed. Whatever slight here was fixed in at least 2022 when they changed all of the systems. But it's still remembered and still been something. Like, generally, when you have people and they don't forget slights from like years and years and years ago, how are you supposed to deal with that, especially when the slights are fixed? You know what I mean? And also when they're just not slights anyway. they're just how the game works. It's hard, you know? Then we have the PL-11 missile was shown in the 2023 trailer, but never added to the game, despite the fact of Gaijin could simply change the name of the Aspide and nerf it to 25G overload and paste it. Yeah, if it was only that simple. Because if they actually did that, then a bunch of Chinese guys would complain and say, no, this isn't actually correct. And yeah, it's amazing how you can just say things and pull them out your ass. But the trailers, yeah, there's been some funny trailer things. In the last one, the F5TH had four Derby missiles on it. It's not going to in game, but yeah, that's why they always have those kind of disclaimers about, ooh, you know, these are more cinematic purpose things, because if they actually did it the other way, they would cause problems. The other part as well is they actually used the wrong ship for the British. I think there was two ships, one that they were bringing in, and the other one, the Renown, which I believe was the event vehicle, or maybe the standard tech tree one. They used the wrong one in the trailer. They used the one that was already there. So yeah, this is not a Chinese issue. This is an everybody issue, and it's a problem with trailers not always representing the game. I think they should. I really do. But once again, it's not a slight. It just happens to everybody, which is kind of the key to all of this. Number 4, the J8B has a decent missile, but with a blind radar. The J8F has a decent radar, but with no radar homing missiles. The J8F could only be used to bomb bases for 2 years. Why didn't Gaijin release other J8 variants with better radars and ability to use Fox 1s? This doesn't fix the J8F, though. You're annoyed at a vehicle, but you want other variants of the vehicle to be added so it's better than that vehicle. But the J8F is still screwed, and so is the J8B. They've also added other Chinese vehicles at the same time, but yeah, the fact they haven't added a specific variant of a J8 that I wanted to see, this is a great slight. Once again, just imagine, well, to be honest, you don't have to imagine, because everybody says this stuff at every single tech tree. It's just once again funny how this time it's talked about in a way to the Chinese tech tree. Number 5, the absence of Chinese helicopter tech tree was as long as 2 years and 9 months. Wow! Meanwhile, as the last tech tree to get any helicopters, Chinese tree only got a premium Z19E in the first game version. The whole Chinese tech tree is always being vacant of some vehicle types or roles. Meanwhile, there are only a few existing ones being decent and strong. That last part of it is ridiculous. The Chinese tech tree is one of the strongest in the game nowadays. Once again, this is the problem with like looking at history and not evolving or adapting your opinion. You just remember like the negative spikes of your mentality and forget everything else. Because the Chinese tech tree is in a great place, and it's it's something that I've talked about for years about how it's just going to keep pushing forward, and it's going to keep being really good, and it's going to keep morphing into a better and better tech tree, and that's what we've seen. There are certain parts of it that aren't the strongest in the game, but guess what? No nation, apart from the major three, have that privilege, and that's just kind of how it goes. All of the other nations in the game that aren't either the top 3 or China have way worse issues than China. It's just the Chinese player base is a little bit louder. The idea they had to wait for like 2 years and 9 months as well for a helicopter tech tree. Oh boy. I mean, Sweden had to wait for ages. Italy had a very malnourished tree is probably the best way to put. But also at the same time, if you remember with the Chinese helicopter stuff, there was a bunch of drama around it because one of the guys who was tasked with giving information to Gaijin about the helicopters just straight up just didn't give them a bunch of information for ages. So maybe that was an issue when it comes to being able to model them. Maybe it was something else. Maybe they couldn't get certain licenses to be able to build stuff in the game. Maybe they couldn't get accurate information about it. Or maybe these things actually take time to produce, and now that they're here in the game right now, you have just a crazy good helicopter tech tree. Now, as I said, this is the problem. They're looking at the time where they didn't have access to it instead of looking at what it is right now and how it's been improved over time. So no matter how Gaijin improves something, even if they make China the strongest nation in the game in all aspects, it doesn't matter because they're just remembering all the times where everything was bad in their heads. So there's no way you can actually win in this thing, which is why when they made that placation post, I talked about this. There is no winning. You only lose because of how these guys see everything. It's just wild. Number 6, the Chinese attack drone has always been the worst of 3 drones in the game since they're released. God damn. Imagine being 7 nations which don't have attack drones of their own. Kind of sad. What a shame. Yeah. But once again, China has been slighted because they're given the worst drone. The fact that they even got a drone compared to, as I said, everybody else should be like there are nations in the game that have attack drones in real life that do not have them represented in the game, right? with the Chinese one, it's represented, unlike everybody else. Don't know. Number 7, for many years, Chinese crew models were often a lot bigger than other countries. The armor models usually have severe problems. E.g., all ZTZ-96 and 99 variants have only 30 millimeters of armor at the barrel, making them easily penetrated by autocannons or even large caliber machine guns. British players say hi, weakest barrels in the game, for no apparent reason, by the way. They just are. Especially the double standard towards Trunnion armors. For instance, a Chinese player's issue on the official forum stated that some Russian tanks' Trunnion armor is buffed for no reason. It's straightly deleted, not even marked as not a bug and ignored as usual, despite having detailed structural pictures and design papers in the post. By the way, if you have bug reports, you go to the bug report website, not the forums. Nothing about nerfing Russia is allowed on that forum anyway. Ah, yes, there's been no Russian nerfs over the years. You know, there's been no nerfs to the MiG-23 with its radar. There's been no nerfs to the MiG-29. That hasn't existed. None of the Russian vehicles have updated damage models either. That also hasn't nerfed them at all. This idea, it's amazing how like the Russian bias thing like just goes across different communities, especially when it's just like blindsided thinking once again. The problem with the ZTZ 96 and 99 is the same as all of the top tier MBTs. There isn't full information about them, so therefore Gaijin has to make guesstimations or decisions based on not complete data. What this means is there will be people who will have different opinions of said data to the Gaijin guys who are maybe using different sources or the same sources and just interpret them differently. This has been an issue since 2017, before or 2018 maybe, before the Chinese texture was added into the game. With updated Advancing Storm, you had the Abrams, the Leopard 2K, and many other vehicles. I warned about this back then, nearly a decade ago now, and now we're having these same conversations because unfortunately there is no fix to this. There is nothing that you can do that will provide Gaijin with the full information that they need because it's classified. So the idea that they model stuff differently, that could be for many different reasons, could be a specific source that they've seen, could be the fact that they're trying to balance it in specific ways. But at the end of the day, if you are annoyed about top tier armor, all I can say is there's nothing you can really do about it. There isn't any fixes to it that turns up. Number 8, top tier Chinese helicopter RWR always shows a question mark. Despite there's currently no publicized information about this issue, but anyone sane should realize that it's not likely a modernized helicopter uses such a garbage RWR. The upcoming update is also removing their ability to detect band KLNM radar signals as well. Remember what I just said about the other part, number 7? Yeah, welcome to number 8. Same issue, obviously. They want Gaijin to give them better RWRs, even though there is no available public information about them having better RWRs, based on the idea that because it is modern, it therefore should be better. There are many modern things that are not better, and they're designed in a specific way to either be more economically efficient or efficient in other areas, basically cutting costs from certain places to add them to others. So you can't just be like, yeah, it should be better because it's 2025. You know, that argument doesn't work. There needs to be actual like sources behind it and stuff. And right now, unfortunately, when it comes to China, getting information about things is like just impossible sometimes, especially since there are so many sources that contradict each other. And then also at the same time, because there are so many different people with different opinions around what is going on. And also at the same time, they had the whole issue where they had members of the Chinese community actively withholding information from Gaijin. And also at the same time, you had members of the community actively lying about things to Gaijin to try and get things changed. This obviously kind of destroys trust. If you remember a few years ago, when we had that whole bust up with one of the Chinese guys who was providing information. You know, people were accusing him of being Taiwanese, and people were also accusing him of doing many different stuff. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Number 9, Gaijin only partly implemented the information provided by X data processor. For example, the PGZ-09's -2 depression angle was implemented, while the VT in a head belt and the hydraulic lift system in the same document were delayed by a long time. So they were added, just not at the same time. What do you think is easier to add? Do you think it's easier to change a value on gun depression? Or do you think it's easier to complete a whole new round and make it actually work? I don't know. Because, one of the things, right? So this is a perfect example of a problem that we have in the general community, not just like the Chinese community. So these two things, adding VT and then a head belt to something, and also when it, oh, by the way, didn't function previously, and then also changing a gun depression angle, these two things are not the same. They do not take the same amount of work to implement. If you remember, when it came to the head belt for the PGZ-09, there was only one vehicle before the PGZ-09 got the head belt, right? That had it, and it was the Puma. And if you were around at that time, you realized it didn't work. The head belt was functionally worthless on the Puma. It did not work. It did not function. When they added the head belt to the PGZ-09, that was the first time the head belt actually worked, right? For not just the Puma, but also the PGZ. And now the PGZ has had to go up in BR like twice because that belt is incredibly good, along with the Gen 3 thermals or Gen 2 thermals and all of its other factors. Great mobility, great targeting speed, all of this stuff. So, but the fact that you are putting these two things together, the amount of effort that has to go into Gaijin fully modeling that ahead round to make sure it works is 1,000 times more than changing the gun depression on a vehicle. So they can do a quick change for a vehicle, and then they can work on a solution to the other part, which also affects many other areas of the game, right? So the idea that these two are put together just shows how ridiculous this whole thing is. Like it's just wild to me. And then number 10, when it comes to submitting information and issues, the Chinese, as well as some other tech trees, are always being double standarded. All of the tech trees are double standarded. That's how it works. Everybody have these grievances, just to let you know. The Norinco official site was called Third Party Site. Publicized official documents were rejected because of no unpublicized information. Right? Okay. When a Thailand soldier posted a VT4 handbook on the internet in 2024, Gaijin nerfed the VT4 accordingly while not buffing the other aspects of the vehicle. But later issues quoting the handbook were rejected for non-publicized data. In a word, all sources without 100% certainty will not be a bug, and those 100% ones will be through by Gaijin as unpublicized data. What they mean by unpublicized data is classified information. So basically, they're not happy that Gaijin isn't using the classified information they're giving them to buff their vehicles or nerf their vehicles, which is an issue we've talked about many times. Gaijin can't use classified information for obvious reasons. It's classified. If they're seen as using the information, they get some very fun knocks on some very fun doors. And then also at the same time, when it comes to classified information, it shouldn't be in the public anyway. So the fact that they are in the public makes absolutely no sense. Also, you have a problem with brochures just straight up lying about things, which is why if you have multiple sources talking about a specific thing, what ends up happening is you have to pick the sources you think are closest to reality. And sometimes what you think is closest to reality is not the same as what the Gaijin guys think is closest to reality. So that's where the whole thing falls apart. And once again, this is an issue with high tier crap, where basically you have a problem where you can never get it right. They could pick that part. They could pick everything that you agree with, and then you'd have somebody else that would say it's all wrong. Because they believe the other side of things. And this is the issue. And this will always be the issue. This is not a Chinese issue. This is a modern day issue. This is a belief issue. This is a censorship issue. This is a a classified issue, because they can't get it right. Because there is no right. Because if they do it a certain way to appeal to you, it probably won't appeal to me, and I'll have several reasons why it's wrong as well. So they can't get it right. It's impossible because they cannot please you at the same time that they please somebody else. So this is always going to be a constant issue, and once again, it's not a Chinese thing. So yeah, here's the first 10 of the 82 accusations. And as you can see, it doesn't disappoint. And one thing, if you're not going to take anything from this video, there's one thing you need to take away. Think about, over the years, how with the international community, or the Western, the Eastern, whatever you want to call it, community, the English-speaking part of the community, how they have so many of the same critiques and same issues as the Chinese guys. Apart from, they are just talking about different vehicles in different spaces. But for some reason, it's okay to say how stupid these critiques are from the Chinese guys, but it is not okay to say how stupid the critiques are from the other guys. And you may want to ask why that is. You may want to ask yourself why those opinions are held. Look after yourselves. Peace be with you. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.